Hillsdale College is a small, Christian, classical liberal arts college that operates independently of government funding, and we want you or your son or daughter to apply. At Hillsdale, students grow in heart and mind by studying timeless truths in a supportive community dedicated to the highest things. Hillsdale College costs significantly less than other nationally ranked private liberal arts colleges and receives regular recognition as a best value, and nearly all students receive financial aid. Our robust core curriculum, vibrant student life, and 8-to-1 student-to-faculty ratio make for an education like no other. For more information or to fill out an application, visit hillsdale.edu/info. That's hillsdale.edu/info.
Welcome to the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast, bringing you insight into classical education and its unique emphasis on human virtue and moral character, responsible citizenship, content-rich curricula, and teacher-led classrooms. Now your host, Scot Bertram.
Thanks for listening. The Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast is part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio. You also can find more information on topics and ideas discussed on this show at our website, k12.hillsdale.edu. Thanks for listening. We're joined by Gabrielle Lewis. She's a classical pedagogy trainer for Hillsdale K-12 Education. Gabrielle, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Scott. It's a joy and a privilege.
Talking to a number of our Hillsdale K-12 classical pedagogy trainers around the office and, in your case, also around the country. Give us a little background on yourself, your educational background, and how your path led you to where you are today.
Absolutely. Yes. So I grew up most of my life outside of Chicago, was publicly educated, and I like to say, by the grace of God, found Hillsdale College and was accepted. And so I began my journey to Hillsdale and into knowing about classical education through it in 2010. And I did do the classical education minor at the school, and both being a student at Hillsdale and being a part of that classical education minor changed the trajectory of my life. I am who I am because of Hillsdale and what I learned there, and it has shaped and formed who I am as a person. So I graduated in 2014, hoping to go into classical education, and a little mom and pop school in Land O'Lakes, Spring Hill, Florida area found me at the school, at the classical school job fair. And I fell in love with the mission and vision of the school. We were not Hillsdale affiliated. However, the founder of the school and the board of the school loves Hillsdale, admires Hillsdale, and wanted so much the philosophy of what we do at Hillsdale to be a part of the school. And so I joined as a 5th grade teacher, and a short couple years later, which is very humbling to say, because of my experience at Hillsdale, I interviewed for, but then was asked to join the administrative team. So I became the Dean of Academics for the lower school that for us served K through 5. So I was in that position for 5 years, and I was supporting the teachers, and we'll talk a little bit about what that kind of a role looks like. Mm-hmm. But I learned so much as a young Dean of Academics for my school. And then I moved into the lower school principal position my last year at the school, which was the 21-22 school year. And that opened up a whole other world of knowledge for me. But really, the whole time, my goal was to promote classical philosophy and classical education, because I believe it is formative for each individual that's a part of it, whether that's the students, the teachers, or the leaders, or the families, and ultimately will be the change that's necessary for our nation. So what brought me to this current position, though, is I had my daughter, my first child, in January of 2022. And as much as I adored being in a school environment, that schedule is hard. And so I sought other opportunities. And I'm so blessed that there was an opening to be a classical pedagogy trainer for the Hillsdale K-12 office. I work with the best team, and they are knowledgeable, thoughtful, and just on fire for the mission of the K-12 office and for classical education in charter and private schools around the country. And so that's where I am now. I'm in Tampa, Florida, doing that. We all are spread around the country, like you said. But it's such a joy to be on this team and to get to know teachers and school leaders around the country and support them in their work.
Given your background, Gabrielle, as a teacher and then a dean and a lower school principal, and we'll get more in depth later on in terms of the classical pedagogy trainer, but teacher, dean, lower school principal, how would you compare and contrast your responsibilities in those three roles in a classical education environment?
Absolutely. Yes. So we'll begin with the teacher role. We'll talk about the differences first and move into what's similar about them. But as a teacher, you're working with the students day in and day out. You truly are the boots on the ground, making the mission and vision a daily reality. Your goal as a teacher is to develop the hearts and minds of your students through sound pedagogy, through knowing and living the content-rich curriculum you're teaching, and by creating virtue-centered classroom management. And in order to do that well, your job is to embrace all the professional development opportunities to strengthen and refine your craft within the classroom, and doing that alongside your grade level teammates. So it is a hugely important role, as you can imagine. Mm-hmm. Then as a dean of academics, or there might be similar titles in different schools like dean of curriculum and instruction or dean of faculty, but ultimately you're responsible for the academic program of the school. And that means the fidelity to the curriculum and pedagogical practices, as well as quality assurance for excellent instruction. And so in order to do that well, your role has to be being in the classrooms as much as humanly possible. And it is easy to get pulled away, especially in charter and private schools where there's so many other things going on and you might be wearing 15 different hats. But you have to be in the classrooms to know what's going on, to support your teachers and what they need and in their growth opportunities, and in order to see what the students are learning. And so being in the classrooms, coaching teachers, and working alongside the head of school or the principal, the school leader, to ensure that the instructional goals are being met throughout the year. As the dean of academics, the teachers were my people. And I learned so much working alongside them and leading them with the guidance and coaching of my head of school at the time. And then moving into the lower school principal role, I was responsible for setting and maintaining the vision and mission of the lower school to all of our constituents. So that includes the faculty and staff, but also the families and the students and the community at large. Ultimately, I was accountable for the health and success of the school in its culture, in its academics, and in its day-to-day functioning. As the principal, I led the charge on setting the year's goals, setting structures in place with my admin team to ensure those goals could be met, and working with the school board for my own accountability. And I also had the precious ability to get to know each of our 700 students by name and getting to know their parents and families, which was truly a gift for me. So that's all the differences, and I'm sure there's others, but ultimately it takes all of these roles and these different people to work towards building the mission and vision and making sure that it is successful. All of the roles have to be clearly defined, the roles and responsibilities, and you have to know what lane you're in to do your job successfully and feel that success. But we are all there to make sure that what the school was meant to do is happening on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. And I will also say that we're all in the different roles. We're all students of classical education. We're all on different continuums of that learning, but we are all learners in the process. And that is a privileged place to be in, and doing it alongside like-minded individuals.
Your focus is in grammar, composition, literature, especially among upper elementary school grades. How do you encourage students of that age and at that level to expand the pool of things that they read about and expand the pool of things that they write about?
It's so important, isn't it? You can't be a lifelong learner without reading and then learning how to, put into words and thoughts what you've read about. So when it comes to reading, the best thing that I can do to encourage my students is to read more, is to model my love for it. This can happen when I'm reading aloud the assigned curriculum and getting truly excited about what is happening in each story and learning how to ask better and deeper questions to pique the curiosity and thinking of my students. That is an awesome time to just show the power that books can have. It also can happen by having conversations about things I'm reading outside of what I teach, in my daily life that have inspired me or made me wonder about things. It is my responsibility to prove to them that I am a lifelong learner alongside them and show them what that can look like for them as they grow and mature beyond their time in school. Some of our best conversations happened about those things, or about the things I was reading or we were reading in class. It really is precious. And the old adage is true that your students will come to love what you love. They can't help but catch what is contagious. And if your love of reading is just that, then they will catch it and want to ingest what you are, not just in school, but hopefully beyond. So, and as for expanding what they write about, it all comes from reading, and reading some more. I've heard it said that you cannot expect to get beautiful out of something or someone if you don't put beautiful in. And so therefore, our students must be ingesting good ideas and content consistently in order to have things from which they can write. We, as a part of my role on the K-12 team, I am becoming an IEW accredited instructor. So IEW means Institute for Excellence in Writing. And recently, the Hillsdale K-12 office has partnered with them in order for us to have a writing program from 3rd through 8th grade for students to learn how to write. And one of the reasons we have partnered with them is because they are a content-based writing curriculum. They predicate themselves on the idea that students will learn the necessary structures and techniques of writing if they have things from which they can write, rather than beginning with a blank page, which is so typical of writing programs nowadays. So you have to have things within your mind from which you can pull to then write about. And that takes inspiration and practice and all of that. But that's how you can encourage students to expand what they read and write about.
Talking with Gabrielle Lewis. She's a classical pedagogy trainer for Hillsdale K-12 Education. As you work with these teachers and you talk to them over the summers and you talk to them, I'm sure, during the school years too, what kind of goals should teachers set at the beginning of each year, and how can teachers set checkpoints for progress along the way?
Yeah, great question. So goal setting is a good and necessary part of being a teacher. But these goals, the goals that are created at the beginning of the year, cannot be created in a vacuum. They have to be in line with the school's mission and its cultural and academic goals for the year, which are set by the school leader in conjunction with the school board. So any growth that happens should be done with those in mind. And checkpoints for progress should be done consistently and systematically with the dean of academics or similar roles and or the school leader. Formal check-ins quarterly is a wise way to support the teacher in her desire for growth, and consistent informal observations within the classroom and then feedback conversations should be happening in between as well. So yeah, all of that together is how you can create goals and then check that you're meeting those goals throughout the year. But obviously, beyond formal school goals, you as a person are going to want to have your own goals in your role as a teacher. And so you want to ask yourself questions like, how can you continue to grow your knowledge of classical education as a whole and of the curriculum you teach for the sake of your own heart and mind? Yes, it's for the sake of the students, But classical education is truly meant to be formative for the teacher, as formative for the teacher as it is for the students. So, looking at what you want to learn for the year, a lot of what drives goals is your passions. So what do you want to learn to help bolster your knowledge of the philosophy and of the pedagogy or of the curriculum, and focus on that. And you can also do that not just alongside the dean of academics or the school leader, but also alongside a colleague or a mentor teacher. We're all in this for the betterment of the school and the students and of ourselves. And doing that with people around you will only benefit you and help you grow the way you want.
You also, as part of the position, hold these training sessions, professional development sessions. Do some of the same methods that you recommend for teachers also work on teachers when you hold these professional development sessions?
Absolutely. It's a great question. And I learned this concept from my former head of school when I was the dean of academics. If you're preaching that these things you're teaching, or these pedagogical practices, these methods for teaching are the best practices, then they ought to be the best for all, no matter the age of the learner. So as a school leader, or now in my case, as a teacher trainer, it is important for me to model the good instruction that we believe will benefit our students. And this includes not only how I actually teach the material that they're learning, but also how I check for understanding throughout the development session, the professional development session, and also in things like giving brain breaks so that my quote unquote students can digest what is being taught. Yes, so you absolutely want to use the things that you want your teachers to implement. Give them examples, give them models, help them create mental models of what that can look like in their own classrooms by doing it yourself as the leader or teacher trainer in your professional development sessions.
And as you send those teachers back to their respective schools, how do you keep track? In what ways can you confirm teachers are following through when you offer them feedback, when you offer them advice? How do you check back to make sure that those things are making a difference in the classroom?
Absolutely. So to begin, how the feedback is given is crucial to success. If I have observed a teacher and see 10 things that can be improved, which is often what happens. We're, human beings and we don't have it all together all the time. Mm-hmm. But if I see those 10 things and then I dump those 10 things on the teacher in a subsequent conversation and expect all of those things to be worked on or corrected, then I am setting that teacher up for failure. Feedback must be two things. It must be granular and high leverage, meaning that what one thing can I hone in on, one, or maybe you could add two, a couple of things that I can hone in on that will create the biggest positive impact for this teacher and the students. That is crucial for them to understand and then feel confidence in to move to the next thing that they can work on. From there, from just giving that granular piece of advice, high leverage piece of advice, often practice of that piece of advice is necessary so that the teacher can get comfortable with living in it and making it a part of who they are. After that, as a dean or a principal, it is vital that I am in the classrooms daily. If I have given feedback to a teacher and expect to see marked growth from that feedback, but I do not follow up within a week to see it in action, it is easy and natural for a teacher to go back to the way he or she knows how to do it. Growth is hard, but good and necessary. And it takes specified feedback, good practice, and follow-up or accountability to see it through.
Going back to your time as dean, as a lower school principal, and from what you've gathered, and you've learned too, from teachers perhaps in the span of being a classical pedagogy trainer, how can the school leaders work best to build consensus, to cultivate enthusiasm among the staff and among the teachers toward a shared vision?
How important. This is everything for a school leader. So much of the work of what a school leader does revolves around the relationships he is able to cultivate, the clarity and tenacity with which he communicates the vision, and the integrity with which he upholds the mission. those are all the ways, or all ways you can build consensus and cultivate enthusiasm toward a shared vision. Now, with relationships, that takes knowing your constituents. Beginning with your faculty and staff, you must invest in their heart banks, so to speak, popping in their classrooms in the morning and saying hello, asking about their weekends, asking about their children by name, remembering that they had X sports event or Y dance thing and asking them about it. All of those things are small, but they build trust and loyalty. And if your teachers know that you care about them personally, they are much more likely to follow your lead. But obviously the school consists of more than just the faculty and staff. You have to get to know the students, and you do that by being around, high-fiving them, just complimenting them on the things they do, being in awe by the work they produce, watching their things that they've memorized, and just being so proud all the time of what they do and who they are. And also the families beyond the students. Every time the families let their children out of the car, I like to say that their hearts are going with them, right? Mm-hmm. It's our children are like it's our hearts walking outside of our chest. And at schools, we are acting in loco parentis, or in the place of parents. And so while we have their children under our roofs, they are ours. And we have an immense responsibility to, of course, keep them safe, but also to do what we said we were going to do, and training their hearts and their minds and forming them as citizens and virtuous individuals. And so if you do not have their parents' trust and respect, that grave and important task is nearly impossible to do well. So relationships are number one. Then communicating vision. It takes a lot of learning and understanding not just the purpose of the school, but also the philosophy which inspired the school to open in the first place, in order to communicate what you're doing all the time and how you're doing it. Mm-hmm. And also communicating requires a lot of practice and refining. Classical education is this huge thing that has spanned for millennia, and to bring that down to an elevator pitch to inspire parents or teachers or whomever it is you're speaking to, that's hard work. It takes practice, but clarity is crucial. And so is being unwavering in knowing the value of the classical education you're providing. It is necessary in this role as a school leader to be bold and courageous in speaking the vision, because what we're doing is so countercultural to everything else that's out there. So communicating that vision and being bold about it is so important in cultivating enthusiasm. And then last but not least, integrity to the mission. As a school leader, if you do not model what you preach, you cannot hope to lead well. In order to gain respect, you have to hold the virtues and ideals of the school at the forefront and make every decision in light of them. And furthermore, every minute detail matters in building the culture you desire. That ultimately upholds the mission of your school. If you capitulate on little things, people pick up on that. It may not be conscious, but subconsciously they are seeing the breakdowns of the little things, and they will eventually build up to larger philosophically integral things that break down the culture of the school. So you must have integrity and be bold in being behind all the little details and how they build up to the larger mission and vision.
Time for one more question with Gabrielle Lewis, who's a classical pedagogy trainer for Hillsdale K-12 Education. I want to go back to your focus area, grammar, composition, literature. Do you have to be a great writer yourself, or a good writer yourself, to be a great grammar or composition teacher? Mm-hmm. Can you do it even if you don't think you yourself are quite so excellent at it?
I wondered this myself when I had to teach fifth graders how to write. It's just true. Well, knowing how to write well and understanding the mechanics of writing and grammar can certainly help in the teaching of grammar and composition. Oftentimes, great writers do not know how they got that way. They might have had a natural affinity for writing, or they may have had a few great teachers along the way that critiqued and refined their skills, like I did specifically at Hillsdale College when I was a student there. But that does not translate into knowing how to teach others how to write. Teaching the skill of writing is hard. It is one of the hardest skills to teach. You're dealing with all different levels of aptitude, the subjective elements of writing, the mechanics of it, and what to or not to write about. It is convoluted. So I would say this is why it's crucial to have a program that supports the teacher in how to teach the technical and stylistic sides of writing. And this is another reason why we personally chose to partner with IEW, because it approaches composition with a systematic, structured, and technical approach, which takes the guesswork out of this very subjective, challenging thing to learn for both students and teachers. And I do not have to be an excellent writer in order to teach IEW, as an example, or well-ordered language, which is our grammar program. Mm-hmm. But I have to get to know the program well by grappling with it, by understanding what I'm asking my students to write and to do. And then from there, hopefully the goal is you become a better writer because of what you're teaching. You tend to learn things the best once you've taught them. That's just true. And so, no, you do not have to be a great writer yourself to be able to teach these things. But hopefully with a good, solid writing program, you can become a great writer yourself.
Gabrielle Lewis, classical pedagogy trainer for Hillsdale K-12 Education. Thank you so much for joining us here today on the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast.
It's been such a joy. Thank you so much, Scott.
I'm Scot Bertram. We invite you to like us on Facebook. Search for Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education. You also can follow us on Instagram at Hillsdale_K12. Hillsdale_K12 on Instagram. Thank you for listening to the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio.